This is Wednesday of Holy Week, so it's time to now look at how we're going to do the next few days before Easter. So there's a few things I want to talk about. Um, First off the hop is the politics of Easter. When we look at who gets final say over how Jesus dies, it is very political. It is not the Hebrew priests that finally decide how Jesus is going to die. It is the Roman guards. And the reason that's important is because for too much of our 2,000 years of history, Christians have called our Jewish siblings Jesus killers. And that attitude has lent itself to the Holocaust and killing of 6 million Jews. It's lent itself to pogroms in Russia and that area, kicking Jews off their homeland. It's led to Jews not being able to have easy access to the economy in the Middle Ages and into the Victorian era. It has meant that immigration has been hard. Just been a whole lot of stuff, nasty stuff, that Christians have done to Jews under the excuse that they killed Jesus. And they didn't. And you can read that in the scriptures. They didn't. So anytime you see the word Jew in the scriptures, translate that into Judean. So the Judeans were the people who lived in Jerusalem and around Jerusalem. And these are the people that would have been written about in the first century of the Common Era. Judaism as we know it, rabbinical Judaism, didn't emerge until somewhere between the 4th to 6th, maybe even the 8th century of the Common Era. So there's no way the people who were writing the Bible, who were all writing in the first century, would have been able to identify rabbinical Judaism. It didn't exist. Just as a explanation of how the two are connected, though, the Hebrews at the temple, the Pharisees, are one of the groups of people they follow. After the temple is destroyed in 70 CE, the Hebrew people are kicked out of Jerusalem. And as they leave, they follow more and more of how the Pharisees taught them to do their faith rather than the Sadducees or any of the other temple priests. So they eventually create a new religion almost based on most of what the Hebrew tradition had already been about. So that's how modern day Jewish folks come to be. But they were not there when Jesus and his closest followers were alive. So remember when you're reading these stories, they are all hyper political. And one of the things we have is Pilate and Caiaphas bouncing responsibility for Jesus' death back and forth. Caiaphas was responsible for the area of Galilee, so that made him responsible for where Jesus came from. Pilate was responsible for Jerusalem, so that made him responsible for where Jesus did what they consider his crimes. And neither one of them wanted the responsibility of killing him until finally Pilate does. And you'll see in a lot of the stories how he washes his hands to get rid of the guilt of having Jesus executed. So remember as you go through. And as you're reading, not only do you want to remember the politics of it, but just read the story. You don't have to worry about there's extra theology that you don't grasp. It's like reading the text of a movie, any other action flick. This is exactly what we're doing as we go through all the various steps to Easter Sunday. It's laid out as a drama, and it includes the Lord's Supper. It includes falling asleep while Jesus is praying. It includes Jesus' arrest and his trial. It includes being nailed to the cross. It includes the women waiting in vigil before they could go and take care of Jesus' body in the tomb on Easter morning. So let's break that down a little bit. Maundy Thursday is the first day you're going to encounter. And Maundy means giving. Usually it's where all of the alms that you've been saving up all week, or all Lent, if you haven't given those away yet, now is the day that you give it away, is Maundy Thursday. Now you don't have to be literal about that, but that's what Maundy means. So we have stories of Jesus washing his disciples' feet. Now, that's not in Mark, but it is in some other Gospels. We have stories of Jesus breaking bread and sharing it. So you might want to have bread and grape juice around. And do this with your family if you want to, or do it on your own. But just taste these things, do these things while you're going through. Jesus goes in to pray for hours at night. Then he's arrested and the trial begins. So Jesus really, from the morning he woke up on Maundy, Thursday, straight through to his death on Friday afternoon, he doesn't sleep. Then we've got the whole period after the trial where Jesus is beaten. It doesn't There's not a whole lot of graphic around it, but you can imagine what that is. If you're a person who draws or you like to journal, this might be something you want to meditate on and spend time with. That Jesus was beaten, and if you've ever been around schoolyard fights or anything else, people don't get beaten casually. There's usually a whole lot of anger around that. So this just gives an example of how angry all these people were at Jesus for whipping up the crowd and getting them really excited about a Messiah that he had a different version of than what they had. The Messiah that they were waiting for was a military leader. They were waiting for someone to throw over the Roman government so that they could have their control of their own land again. And that's why Palm Sunday is so symbolic. It's because he came in looking like a king um, in connection with all of the Hebrew traditions of the day. And the people were wanting this warrior, and he didn't turn out to be this warrior. And they felt betrayed. They felt really, really angry that they had invested. So this is another part of the story, is you've got all these people who think Jesus owes them for the lies they perceive him telling. And if you notice, he didn't really talk at all during Palm Sunday. He throws over the temple tables in the temple on shortly after he arrives, but aside from teaching his closest followers, he doesn't really talk to a whole lot of people. So they've developed this whole image of who they want him to be, and when he's not, it's really easy for them to yell crucify. And so that's something else to pay attention to, is who all the characters are in the story, and imagine what their perspective was. Why are they doing this? You can assign motivation to them all you want. Try not to make cartoony about it or simple, because all of these people did exist in real life. And we need to know that they, as people, had a multiplicity of motives. They weren't all good or all bad. They were just normal people who did what they thought needed to happen in the moment. It doesn't make them right, but it gives us an opportunity to have a little compassion for people who, remember, were under the terror threat of the Romans at any point in time. Everybody in Jerusalem could be executed by the Romans without any warning. So the threat they felt was real. It wasn't made up. If you were dealing with candles for Lent, you want to make sure that on Good Friday you blow out the one that is your Jesus candle, your Christ candle. And you leave that out until Easter Sunday, because that candle represents Jesus. If you're in church and you see a white pillar candle at the front, it's called the Christ candle. And the only time it is extinguished is the beginning of Advent up until Christmas Eve, because we're waiting for Jesus to be born at that point in time. And then it gets extinguished again Good Friday, and then lit again on Easter. Those are Advent and the end of Good Friday to Easter Sunday are the only times that candle is not lit in Christian worship. Now you can have other candles around if you have your altar, if you want a little prayer space as you read over these stories, go for it. This is your time of reflection and your time of delving into the story. And it's okay to feel sad and angry and dark about this, because Easter's coming, and Easter is going to be the bright, joy, happy thing. And it's easier to get happy when you've had some sadness. And that's exactly what the Easter Vigil is. It's a time for the followers of Jesus to sit together and pray and cry and meditate, sing songs, read scripture. In so many of our Christian traditions, there are lists of scriptures to read for Easter Vigil. You don't have to look for that. You can find them online if you want to. But the whole idea of the scriptures on Saturday Vigil are showing times when God intervened with humanity. So that Christ being the ultimate intervention of God, because God became incarnate in Christ. So you can have all of that right there available to you as you read through the scriptures, the story in Mark. Now, one of the other things about the Easter Vigil is it is often an all-night affair. So this is an opportunity for you to stay up all night if those who are in authority over you are in agreement about this. You'll be very tired the next morning, but if you are reading, and if you are praying, and if you are writing, and you are thinking about this kind of stuff, you'll be joining millions of Christians right around the world. If you're looking for a lark or just to play or watch video games or movies, that's not what this is about. It doesn't mean you can't do that occasionally throughout your time awake, but that's not the deal. This is a time to be really reflective and insular about how you go about doing things. Easter will be upon us in no time. If you have the opportunity to watch the sunrise, which I know most teenagers just groan at the thought, but it's really cool, and especially if you're somewhere near water and you can watch the sunrise over water with everything shimmering. It's really kind of neat, and it's a moment that's going to stick with you throughout the rest of your life, even if you hate getting up early in the morning. But Easter is the day that if you've been fasting, you can now start to eat all the foods that you were fasting from. If that's part of your tradition, that you've been waiting for them to come back. If you've been fasting to rid yourself of a poor behavior, please keep it up. Don't just get rid of it because Lent is over. You worked this hard to do it, so learn some new behaviors in their place. Easter is also an opportunity for you to share the stories of women. One of the really cool things about Christianity that not a lot of people really highlight is that the two most important messages in Christianity, the Annunciation, so when when the angel announced to Mary that she would have Jesus, and resurrection, when Mary Magdalene saw that Jesus was alive, they're both women. Women were absolutely instrumental in our faith. So if you were a teenage person identifying as female, or even non-binary, and you want to really highlight the role of who was involved, it's a really good time to get your feminist on, because women shared the gospel. They were there first. The men didn't believe us, but women were there. So an opportunity again to relive what these people, and remember, these were historical people. These were not just characters on a show. These are real people who lived and worked and died. And they followed Jesus around in real time in Jerusalem. So spend time this weekend. It doesn't have to be all the time, but just spend a little more consciousness time reading the scriptures and thinking about it. In your calendars, you will have scriptures for Holy Week that tell the story, but I haven't put in the entirety of Holy Week in your calendar. So just start at Mark 11 and just keep on reading. One of the things you're going to notice at the end of Mark is they've got two endings. So don't worry about the second ending. Read up to the first ending, and that was the people being told to go and tell the story and them being too scared to. The whole idea of that style of narrative was, we're too scared to, but you please, as the readers, go do it on our behalf. So find yourself in that place with Mark's gospel and go tell the story. As for the second ending, that was added a long time later, and it was made to look like the end of Luke. It wasn't there in the beginning when Mark was first created. So have time, have fun. Sounds like a weird word, but seriously, enjoy yourself this Maundy, Thursday. Feel all the feelings. Look at all the darkness. Look at all the humans failing at getting the big picture. Do not worry that there's some kind of extra spiritual or theological meaning that you're missing. There isn't any. This is strictly a story, an action story. So follow it through to the end. Do the things or not, but spend some time thinking about it. And then on Easter Sunday, you can start to feel the joy that they must have felt when they realized the darkest despair of the days that they'd ever experienced was just for naught. there was no reason to dwell on it because Jesus resurrected, and that was the greatest action and promise we could have had.